We're gonna get in one of those containers and escape that way.
Is that safe?
I don't know.
Hey guys, Tara here, and today I'm going to be reviewing Borderlands, the pre-sequel, which is very exciting. I have been a huge Borderlands fan since day one, but I have been a little bit wary of the sequel, knowing that it wasn't developed primarily by Gearbox, who did the previous two Borderlands games. Instead, this one was developed by 2K Australia under the guidance of Gearbox. So with that in mind, how is it? Does it stack up to previous games? Here's my review.
Damn near killed my two best men before they brought you in.
She said we're her best men. That makes me feel good.
Any longtime fan of Borderlands can tell you the series is composed of three main things: a sarcastic, witty sense of humor, lots and lots of shooting, and more loot than any one person could ever feasibly need. It's safe to say the pre-sequel continues that tradition, putting its own spin on the franchise, taking players away from the world of Pandora all the way to the moon. It's an interesting take with some very clever new additions, but like any game in a series created by someone other than its original developers, the pre-sequel does lose some of its charm along the way. And what remains is essentially a good game that's still nowhere near as good as its predecessors.
Oh geez, that was really dark.
2K Australia has repeatedly said that the pre-sequel offers a good introduction to the Borderlands series. It's set in between the events of Borderlands 1 and 2, and it focuses on Handsome Jack, the villain everyone loves to hate, as he begins his spiral down into villainy. You really don't need to understand much more than that to be able to follow the story. But for a series like Borderlands, whose plot has historically been pushed forward by quirky characters and inside jokes, it does benefit you to be able to understand the origins of those jokes, if only for the fact that you'll appreciate them more.
Jack is really good looking, and that makes me feel less good looking, and that makes me angry!
One of the most obvious points of fan service is being able to play as Claptrap, the lovable, pathetic robot who wants nothing more than to be accepted by his peers. He, along with 3 other new faces, make up a team of 4 Vault Hunters who are, for the first time in the history of the series, working alongside the enemy rather than against them. You have Athena the Gladiator, whose kinetic Aspis shield can absorb damage and spit it back at enemies, Wilhelm the Enforcer, a powerful tank with drones that can heal and inflict damage, Nisha the Lawbringer, a gun virtuoso who can dual wield, and finally Claptrap the Frag Trap, a robot who's impervious to low oxygen and extremely sensitive to rejection. The variety in skill trees is, in my opinion, one of the best things the pre-sequel has going for it. Every character has a completely different playstyle, and all of the skills feel fresh and new. Claptrap in particular has some of the most unique abilities, including a few that are clear throwbacks to his wannabe personality. More so than any of the previous games, the pre-sequel is one you'll want to play over and over again just to get a taste of what each character has to offer.
I did a challenge? I did a challenge!
The environments are also a huge change up from the rest of the series, in ways that are mostly positive. Low gravity areas make for some extremely intense vertical combat that's, dare I say, better than either of the previous games. Particularly the new cryo element, because let's face it, nothing says fun quite like freezing a guy and then watching chunks of his frozen body explode off into space. It's really quite magical.
I'm putting you on ice.
Low gravity also paves the way for a feature that's completely new to the series: oxygen. Now, players will have to constantly monitor their oxygen levels while outside, and Oz kits, which grant special abilities like increased slam damage, add a really neat dimension to the gameplay. Personally, I found those changes very refreshing, but for people who just want to shoot stuff without having to worry about oxygen, you can always play as Claptrap, the one character who, for all of his problems, at least doesn't have to worry about that.
This can't keep a good bot down!
I will say I am a little disappointed by the lack of enemy types. That's definitely not something new for the series, but I would say it's slightly more apparent in the pre-sequel, and unfortunately, the pacing of the game really doesn't help. The first 10 hours or so drag on endlessly, and while I appreciate being able to experience the story from a new perspective, the fact is the main storyline just isn't all that interesting. Even the new non-playable characters seem almost like recycled personalities from previous games. And for a series whose humor is hinged on its characters, that means the jokes can often feel recycled too.
Switching to crappy emergency power.
No! My lovely engine!
This isn't to say the pre-sequel isn't funny, because it is. There were more than a few jokes that caught me off guard, including some that take direct and hilarious jabs at stereotypes within gaming and nerd culture. But on the whole, it's the repetitiveness of the game's characters that make the humor feel slightly contrived. In that regard, it's a pretty accurate demonstration of the game's strengths and weaknesses. It's a great co-op shooter with a bland story that's trying just a little too hard to capitalize on the franchise's success. It's not ideal, but at the same time, it's Borderlands. Your number one priority should and always will be shooting stuff. So if that's the barometer you're comfortable with using, then chances are you won't be disappointed. So that is my review of Borderlands, the pre-sequel. I do want to mention that the game is fairly glitchy, at least on PC, which is what I play it on. Nothing game-breaking really, but I did notice a lot of texture pop-in, so hopefully that's something that will be fixed post-release. Other than that, not really much to say. I mean, it's Borderlands. As long as you don't go into it expecting a masterpiece on par with Borderlands 2, then I think you'll be fairly satisfied. Reminder that this comes out on October 14th on 360, PS3, and PC. As always, if you guys have questions about the game, you can direct them to me on Twitter at TerraLongest, and I will do my best to answer them. Otherwise, that's it. Thanks for watching. The demo I played yesterday, we got about 3 or 4 hours of hands-on time with the game. We started at the beginning of Sequence 3 and then sort of jumped to Sequence 5. Sequence 3 starts in New York, where Shay is basically recovering after being betrayed, but the area of the city that he's staying in keeps getting terrorized by gangs. So he